So with that clay that you have, that you're not, you haven't had any success with, what you're going to do is you're going to put your hands on top of the clay on those two sides, and you're going to shift down and push that clay into itself, right? So you can see, as I talked in the video before, hands on the sides, not on the top, and you're just going to work your way into it. Okay, so my board is kind of shifting a little bit as I'm working, so make sure you have a really nice stable surface that you're working on as you do that. Okay, and you will know you're wedging correctly when you get to that really nice spiral. You guys start to see that in my piece? Okay, so as we do that, and I want you to do it for about 25 times as you're working your way around. Okay, so from here, we are now going to start to figure out the coiling process. So to make a coiled vessel, we need to have clay for the base, and for the base you're going to create a slab. And so that slab, you're going to cut off a little bit of the clay that you have, and then you're just going to work that down. And keep in mind that the radius of your base is going to determine how big your vessel is. So if you're planning to only make a vessel that's about 8 inches to 10 inches tall, but you start with a base that's this wide, but you have certain dimensions that you have to meet, if your base is too wide, your vessel is going to turn out to be about 25 inches tall. So make sure that you're paying attention to your proportions as you're working. And just like I've taught you before, I prefer to throw a slab. You can see how successful it becomes when I throw correctly that slab and pull my hands back to get that nice, thin, consistent form. We want this to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. No less than that. Okay? Can you guys hear me when I say that? If you make your pieces too thin, they will not be able to sustain the weight as you start to build on top. So right now I'm taking a pony roller and kind of flattening this down a little bit. And then to compress my clay, I'm going to take my smooth rib and compress in one direction and then the other. So my piece has got a nice, consistent, compact, compressed slab. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to cut a nice circular shape. My extra clay I'm going to put aside because I'm going to use that later. And I've got my nice base that I'm starting with. So the form that I want to start with today, so I'm going to take that extra clay that I have and I'm going to break this up into 2 pieces. And so in my hands, to make my life easier, because this is a coil building vessel, I am going to squeeze that clay in my hand and to get it into a general coil shape first. So I'm doing this. And then I'm going to put this on the surface that I'm working on. And doing this while you're standing is ideal, not sitting, because you can use your whole body to work up and down that coil. The longer your coil is, the better. So as I talked about before in my other demos, you're going to roll that coil using the full circumference of your hand. There should be no rocking. You're going to go from your wrist to the tips of your fingers, and you're going to work up and down that coil, making sure that everything is moving. And so as I'm going, this is becoming thinner as I work. And it's getting longer. And we want it to be a little bit less than 1/2 of an inch. Okay? Look how long my coil is. Right? Nice and long. So the first step is to take your base, your slab base, your serrated rib, and we're going to add a scored edge around that form. Do you guys see that? And then from there, I'm just going to use my spray bottle, but you could use a little brush and water. But I'm just going to put 2 little sprays, that's it. And then I'm also going to score along the edge of my coil, so it's nice and scored. I'm going to attach from one scored surface to the next onto the vessel as I'm working. Can you guys see that well? As I work my way around. And when I push this down, I'm only compressing it. I'm not squishing. Okay? So I'm compressing, making sure that it's adhering, and I'm working my way around. Check that out, right? So from here, again, I'm just compressing and making sure that everything is all coming and cultivating into, there's no gaps, but I'm not squishing this flat, okay? A tendency for beginners is to take their hands and to pinch these walls. And so what happens when we pinch the walls? What's going to happen to the piece?
You'll lose the coils?
Well, it'll get thinner. So it's going to get thinner as you work your way around. So we don't want it to get thinner. We want to maintain the same consistency. So that's what we want to start with, right? So we want it to be compressed but not pinched. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to roll out one more coil. I'm going to roll out one more coil. Sorry about that, everybody. Get this nice. And if you're having trouble with your coils, let's say that it starts to get really flat, you want to put it on its high edge and then squish it back down again so that you are not, actually I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to do this guy right now. And you want your coils to be the same size throughout. So try not to make them too thin and definitely don't make them too thick. So when you make any vessel in ceramics, it cannot exceed an inch thickness, okay? So from here, I've got my vessel. From here on out, I do not need to score. I only need to score where it adheres to the main slab on the bottom. And then I work my way up. So let's say that I was making a vessel that is straight up. I just work and put one coil right on top of the other. But let's say that I want to make a vessel that starts to flare out. So I would put it like a staircase, a little bit on the edge of the previous coil and start to work my way outward. Does that make sense to everybody? If I'm making a vessel and I'm starting to work my way in, I would gradually work inward, okay, from the previous coil that I had. But for me, with my demo for today, I'm just going to go straight up. And then from here, again, I'm not pinching, I'm just compressing. Nothing in this vessel has changed with the thickness from the original coil that I rolled out, okay? From here, this is the next step that's really important. You are going to take the serrated rib. And so the serrated rib, at this point, is going to conjoin all of your coils together. So with my hands supporting on the inside, so this is really important. You have to support the inside with your hand or your piece will collapse. So you're going to support with that inside hand, and then with your serrated rib, you're going to kind of curve it in your hand, and you're going to scrape up along the side. And so when I do that, all of my previous coil fuses together. Do you guys see that? So what happens very commonly with beginners is they are too soft and they barely scratch the surface. Do you see the difference between the two? Okay, so it's really important that you support with that inside hand, you curve that tool, and you scrape up. And if you need to, you can also scrape down. Like that's an option too. Up or down, but you work your way around. And I'm doing this pretty fast because, I don't know, around the clock. And for the inside, so if your tool is too wide, turn it on its side and do the same thing on the inside. So you're going to work your way all the way around. And I would suggest, it's very common that beginners also will put just one coil on and then score. That will take forever. It's best to get between 4 to 5 inches of coils before you smooth out each time. Okay? It's also imperative that you also do the entire process between breaks. Because when you coil build, your pieces need to set up a little bit before you can build on top of that. It's a little bit every day. So I have this much clay here. I now use my smooth rib, and I'm going to start to hold it the same way on a curve, and I'm going to start to curve along the side. Again, continuing to support that inside hand and work my way around. And as I'm working my way around, all of those coils are just adhering to each other and becoming one mass. Same thing again on the inside, turning it on its side, and I'm rotating and smoothing everything out. So let's say that you've been working on your vessel for a while and you've got to go. You've got to go to work, you've got to go to another class. This is the step that your piece has to look before you move on. Because if you leave it just coil or just scored with the scoring tool, it will be too dry to smooth out later on. So this is step 1. Step 2, so let's say I need to leave and go do something else and then I come back later. For me to do the next step where I build up on top of that, I roll more coils, I score the edge, and I continue to build up. Okay? So in this assignment, this historical vessel assignment, you will be utilizing what you've already learned. If you have parts that need to be pinched, if there are parts that need to be slabs, but for the most part, this vessel needs to be coil built. Okay? So when we start to coil build, we start to work our way out. And so I'm going to work on this a little bit today, and then I'll continue working on it next class. Okay?